We're so glad you've joined us on the ERLC podcast to explore how the Bible addresses important cultural issues pertaining to life, religious liberty, marriage and family, and human dignity, and how we can walk in wisdom for God's glory and for the flourishing of our neighbors. If you're enjoying this podcast and find it helpful, please leave a review wherever you listen. This will help more people find and benefit from what we're learning together. We are grateful for the time you take to join us for these conversations.
You're listening to the ERLC podcast.
Well, did we start at the exact new year? This is stupid. Let me start again.
Yeah, I mean, this is already off the rails. It's.
I already know what the funny.
I just don't even. Where was that going?
I don't know. Hello, and welcome back to this week's episode of the ERLC podcast, where each week we'll be talking about our work at the ERLC and focusing on what Christians should know about the things going on in the world. I'm Lindsay Nicolay, and with me is my faithful co-host, Brent Leatherwood.
It's a pleasure to be back in the studio again with you, Lindsay.
What everyone should know is that this is our 50th take, maybe. We're having trouble relating to one another on the podcast, I guess. I think this morning, our audio producer was so kind and offered to bring us coffee, and you passed him up because you have a Starbucks addiction. But he brought me a Cuban coffee.
Well, but he brought the one that I personally recommended because had he sent in his gracious offer to provide us with coffee about 30 minutes prior, I absolutely would have said, yeah, please, because I love their Cuban coffee at this coffee shop, The Well, here in Nashville.
Yeah, so I took your suggestion and got a Cuban. I think, though, it's providing a lot of caffeine that is causing
it is so
my
good.
Cylinders to
I usually drink 2 of those, though.
Oh, my word. I don't know how.
Yes.
I'm feeling a little shaky, and my cylinders are misfiring, so who knows what this podcast is going to be like this morning, but we're off to a rocky start.
It is. Yeah. Well, no, it's a good start. It's a Cuban coffee-fueled start.
Right. I don't know how you drink 2 of these.
Bienvenidos. Here we go.
I would be wired, yes. So let's go ahead and start talking about what the ERLC is featuring this week. And I want to start off with a piece by Jason Thacker, who, as you know, we've talked about his work many, many, many times over the course of this podcast. And he especially helps us in the areas of technological ethics or digital ethics. And this article is 2 ways to make digital activism better. Real-world relationships bring about change. And the gist of this article is that, yes, social media is good for many things, and social media activism can be good. And the example I think about is our friend and SBC pastor, Griffin Gullidge, and how he tweeted out something that brought to light an atrocity happening in China, and that is the persecution of the Uyghur people group. And it really, the Lord used it, and it went viral, and it has really started some important activism on behalf of the rights of the Uyghur people. However, that activism doesn't always work in that way. And what Jason is saying is that real change needs to happen by us getting face-to-face in our communities and making a difference there, building relationships. And that will often move the ball forward in lasting change that we want to see.
Right, Lindsay, to put it another way, real-world connections, those lead to real-world change. And it underscores this point in this moment where we are just continually online, whether it's on our laptops, on our phones, just staring at these avatars that come across our screen. It just leads us to this place where we kind of forget that people are actually embodied and we need real world connection, not only just to make a difference, but I would suggest to actually thrive as humans who are created in God's image. Because when you flatten that reality via a screen, it leads you to not only unhealthy relationships, but it leads you to it leads you to a place where you forget that even maybe those you disagree with are just as much made in the image of God as we are. And so, it's important to have those connections. It's important to get out there. And, you and I were talking off mic, like, if you really want to make a difference, like, instead of tweeting harder about something, instead get involved where it really matters. I mean, we in the context that we're in this month, and especially next week with the annual March for Life coming up, right? Getting involved and volunteering at a local pregnancy care center. It's a great way to actually make a difference. And it will do immeasurably more good than simply tweeting something. That actually will make a difference in the lives of an individual or individuals. And that's where our real focus needs to be.
Well, it's not wrong to want to see change, and it's not wrong to want it fast. But of course, we live in a microwave world where everything seems to happen fast. But oftentimes, real change happens slowly, and it's just through the faithful prodding work of individuals. And I've just started my Bible reading for the year. I'm listening to it and trying to follow along. But anyway, I'm in Genesis, and I'm just reminded how the Lord's work is often slow. Abraham waited, and Sarah waited for a long time for the promised heir to be born, Isaac. And then you just continue to see how the Lord works, but it looks fast to us because we have the privilege of being able to read it in a setting, but it just takes a long time of trusting the Lord and faithfully plodding along in prayer and in the power of the Spirit. And so I appreciate the motivation behind this article that, yes, we can use technology for good, but ultimately we need to bring those relationships and the change that we're trying to affect into our real lives and start there. And then the final article that I wanted to highlight, in light of us really focusing on the issue of the sanctity of human life and the pro-life movement this month with Sanctity of Human Life Sunday throughout SBC churches happening on January 22nd. As Brent mentioned, the March for Life happening next week. This article is by Caitlin Walls Shelton, and it comes from our latest issue of Light magazine that we talked about and linked to last week. But it's titled, Abortion is Not Healthcare, the Historical and Biblical Understanding of a Doctor's Obligation. So before the Dobbs ruling came down, there was a lot of chatter about how abortion is healthcare, about how pregnancy resource centers have false advertising and they are not healthcare. And the reality is a Planned Parenthood or another center where you could go to receive an abortion, by definition, cannot be healthcare, because healthcare in the truest sense involves aiding life and helping life to flourish. But an abortion is taking away a life, ending a life, snuffing that life out before it even really gets a chance to develop. And then that abortion oftentimes has negative effects on the woman who goes through that abortion, whether that be physically or mentally or emotionally. So Caitlin Shelton walks through these things, walks through the historical and biblical understanding of what healthcare professionals are called to, and just shows how, no, abortion is not healthcare, regardless of what anyone is trying to tell us. So I appreciate her article, how thorough she is here, and how she helps equip us to answer these ridiculous claims that are thrown out there on the interwebs, and enables us to answer them intelligently.
Well, Lindsay, that's a perfect segue into what I mentioned before, this wider moment that we're in, with next week being March for Life, and we'll touch on that. But one of the things that you brought up as you were describing Caitlin's piece, that's very similar to actually something we touched on last week with the FDA decision for the increased accessibility of the abortion pills that are now going to be, soon will be available at local pharmacies. It's this twisting of whether it's the definition of healthcare or the kind of what you normally would think of with the pharmacy, right? Pharmacies, you think, that's where I go to get medicine that will help me get better, will help my life be sustained. And we're talking about abortion pills that will be available that will take life. Like that just seems counterintuitive for what you would go to a pharmacy for. And even more broadly, just like you were pointing out, healthcare. Healthcare is meant to care for someone, nurse them back to wellness, to save life. And here we're talking about abortion, which by definition ends a life. And so we just need to be attuned to the ways that the abortion industry kind of twists the meaning of certain words or certain services that are out there. And that's especially appropriate in this time that we're in, which is the lead up, on the Baptist calendar to Sanctity of Human Life Sunday, which is on January 22nd this year. And that's a purposeful Sunday that is chosen each year because prior to now, that has coincided with when the Roe versus Wade decision was handed down by the Supreme Court, enshrining abortion as this right across the land. And, estimates show 60 million lives have been lost because of that disastrous Supreme Court opinion. And with last summer, we saw the historic Dobbs decision come and overrule, praise the Lord, overrule that decision. And the effect of it, though, has been the discussion about abortion, the deliberations about abortion policy. That's now happening at the state level and in local municipalities around the country. And so this week, we had just another reminder of that. Actually, it was the very tail end of last week. The state Supreme Court down in South Carolina, they struck down a 6-week abortion ban that had been proposed and signed into law by legislators and the governor in that state. And so this first story comes to us about this from the Washington Post. Just want to read a little bit about it. The South Carolina Supreme Court struck down the state's 6-week abortion ban on Thursday, ruling that the law that restricted abortions after a detectable fetal cardiac activity is an unreasonable restriction upon a woman's right to privacy and therefore is unconstitutional. The 3-2 decision means abortion in South Carolina is now legal until around 20 weeks of pregnancy. The ruling comes nearly 2 years after the state enacted the law known as the Fetal Heartbeat and Protection from Abortion Act, which banned abortion after 6 weeks, except in limited cases like pregnancies that would endanger the pregnant person's life, pregnant woman's life is what we would say, or that were the result of rape or incest. So why do we bring this up? This is just more evidence of how in the post-Roe era that we're in, through the Dobbs decision, which is giving states more freedom to regulate abortion policy, how it's playing out. And it's going to play out in some states probably the way that we assume, like right here in Tennessee right now, abortion is effectively outlawed. And in states like California or Illinois that see themselves as abortion destinations, they're going to be going in the opposite direction. But that's not to say, for those of us who care about this issue and want to see every single life protected, that there's not going to be little challenges or kind of hiccups to what we would assume is going to play out. And that's what we're seeing here in South Carolina. At the end of the day, I am sure that leaders in South Carolina, they're legislative leaders, they're going to respond to this Supreme Court decision, and they're going to figure out a way to restrict abortion, similar to the fashion that this law was. And they're probably going to, I would imagine, look at something like we did here in Tennessee initially as we started our pro-life advocacy, which kind of became a model for other states, which is to say, they would probably craft something, I would imagine, that says something along the lines of there is no inherent constitutional right to an abortion, and start working its way around what the court has decided here. Plus, let's also understand that this Supreme Court, the makeup actually in the court in South Carolina is changing. So it's very possible that the court becomes more conservative. And so that all that to say, this likely is not the last say in South Carolina. And but we need to be as Christians who care about preborn life, as folks who want to see these vulnerable mothers that are targeted by the abortion industry, as folks who care about the family, we need to be attuned to these sorts of challenges and continue to advocate for life, why it matters that our state leaders should enshrine and establish a true culture of life in our state laws, and then continue to nationally go before our nation's leaders and say that every single life that is conceived has immeasurable worth and value, and that we should have laws that reflect that. That's why it's important for us to pay attention to developments just like this.
Well, it helps to hear your commentary about it as someone who understands how some of these political moves work and how winds shift and change and redirect. Because with the striking down of this abortion law, it could seem like, okay, South Carolina is making a turn for the worse. It can be discouraging. It can be easy to wring your hands over. But as you're explaining, it's kind of a blip on the radar right now, and you seem to be hopeful that it will.
Yeah, and I shouldn't characterize it if I left the impression that I was saying it's a blip. I don't mean, look, this is going to have very real consequences in until this kind of gets settled, whether it gets appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court or the legislature takes some sort of action or respond to it. There's a very high likelihood that there will be lives lost, preborn lives lost. And so I don't want to diminish that reality. And that is a tragic reality for our folks and friends and citizens of South Carolina who are trying to navigate this. So I don't mean to diminish it like that. What I'm trying to say instead, though, is that longer term, with a longer view, I'm optimistic they're going to solve this challenge that's been created now by the Supreme Court decision.
That's a good and helpful clarification. And we can certainly be praying that way and hoping that way and working toward that.
Yeah, I'm almost positive that our friends at the South Carolina Baptist Convention, which one of our trustees, Dr. Tony Beam, is one of their legislative liaisons for the state capitol. I'm almost positive they're probably already hard at work trying to craft a solution and be a helpful voice as legislators think through this challenge. So yeah, that's good. And just like I mentioned, the South Carolina Baptists very likely providing and almost certainly will provide a helpful voice in those deliberations about life. That's part of what we do here at the ERLC. And it is also a function of a brand new organization that has more or less been birthed out of the ERLC. And that's this new organization known as Stand for Life, which I'm sure listeners here have heard us talk about our Stand for Life initiative. And this month, it formally became its own independent pro-life organization, which we want to celebrate this moment. And Baptist Press has a story that looks at the launch of Stand for Life. So I'll read a little bit here. A new organization that grew out of an alliance of more than 100 pro-life groups has launched with a Southern Baptist entity providing a vital contribution. Stand for Life became a separate organization at the start of 2023 with the purpose of uniting the pro-life movement to establish a culture that affirms every human being, including the preborn child, is made in the image of God. It also seeks to strengthen support for women who experience unexpected pregnancies. The new organization will hold a private meeting of pro-life organizations next week in Washington, D.C., and they changed from its original plan to host a national conference on those dates. The Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission provided leadership as well as logistical and financial support for the collection of pro-life groups in the early years before Stand for Life's transition to an independent organization. With the change, Elizabeth Graham, previously the ERLC's Vice President of Operations and Life Initiatives, has become Stand for Life's Chief Executive Officers. Others who formerly worked in support of Stand for Life as ERLC staff members have also moved to the new organization. And we'll link to the story so that you can read more. But in my comments to Baptist Press about this, I touched on the fact that this was an idea that was conceived of several years ago under Russell Moore's leadership, and specifically our former executive vice president Philip Bethengord. And it's just, I don't think even then when we kind of talked about it as a team, any of us could have imagined it actually becoming its own independent, self-sustaining organization. We kind of thought this as kind of like an initiative that, was a great idea. But the fact that it's now gotten to this point is just incredible. And the point I make in my remarks, it's a testament particularly to the leadership of Elizabeth. Folks who may know her, who listen to the podcast, they will know she is a committed, passionate advocate for the dignity of preborn children and their mothers and their families. And just her incredible skill set that she has, I think, is uniquely suited for Stand for Life becoming its own independent organization. And so we're thrilled at this move. I mean, essentially a permanent pro-life partner for the ERLC has been created, and that's great. We need more voices on the pro-life front. And so, the way I look at it is we here at this commission, we're going to continue the pro-life advocacy that our churches expect from us, continue to be that front-running voice, if you will, for life. And now we've got this great new partner that's going to be there right alongside us, that's kind of stamped with, the fingerprints of the ERLC. And so, and it's more than just Elizabeth. I mean, we have several teammates that are now a part of this entity, and we're so grateful for all of them. And now they're not just former colleagues, and they're not just partners, but they're friends. And so I'm really excited about this moment and what it means.
It's definitely bittersweet because it includes people that we've worked with for many years who are sent out from us. And so that part is bittersweet. But with Elizabeth in charge, the Lord has certainly stirred up her heart as it regards life issues and has uniquely equipped her to be at the helm. And then the other individuals who are at that organization, they will do great, important work. I have no doubt about that. And we will definitely be cheering them on and partnering with them. But we will certainly miss them being 100% involved in ERLC.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it's appropriate what you just said about them being sent. I kind of compare it to the way, if you're in the local church and you've got this family that's super involved and they're Johnny on the spot with whatever the church might need. And then all of a sudden, the pastor recognizes them one Sunday and says, and the Jones family here, they feel called to go overseas and serve on the mission field. And so we're going to send them. And it's like, oh gosh, what a loss day-to-day wise for our congregation. But what an awesome opportunity for these folks to go to another setting and continue to spread the gospel and to be backed up by the support of our church. Well, in a way, that's what we're seeing here. And so they are, in a way, being sent from the ERLC. But the good news is they're not going very far, and we're going to continue to partner with them. And so this is all that more of a exciting opportunity because, as we've mentioned now a couple times, next week is March for Life, the annual event that was meant to rally and capture the nation's attention during the year-to-year mark of when the Roe decision came down. And honestly, thankfully, we don't have to rally to overturn Roe anymore. That has been done. And instead, this is, I think, an opportunity for pro-life advocates from across the country to come together and still say, the job is not yet finished. The Dobbs decision certainly represented the greatest achievement in the history of the pro-life movement. And yet, our work isn't finished. And it just reinforces what we have said on this podcast and elsewhere, that the Dobbs decision did not represent the end of the pro-life movement. It merely represented the beginning of a new chapter. And that's certainly, I think, the spirit of what you will see next week at March for Life. And so in case you're curious a little bit about March for Life, we've included a link to it. It is organized by our friends over on the Catholic side of the pro-life community. But we're certainly supportive of the aims of, again, capture the attention of folks. And Stand for Life, as it's launched as its own independent organization, it's been driving towards hosting an event that coincides with March for Life. So they're still continuing to do that. The focus has been modified slightly from the original plan, but it's still going to provide incredible content that we actually would utilize ERLC and provide for our churches. There's a new curriculum that's coming that our churches will be able to use that will be really kind of centered there at this event for folks, and just all the incredible connections. I mean, that is the thing I think is an underrated point of value and need within the pro-life community. Is we need to continually make sure that these connections are strong, and especially now that the pro-life conversation isn't centered in just one place in our nation's capital, but in fact is centered in all 50 states and in local communities. And I think that's the challenge before us as a pro-life movement, is how do we make sure that we are getting down into those neighborhoods and backyards and effectively spreading our pro-life message.
Well, and it goes full circle to the first story that you mentioned about South Carolina, the Supreme Court striking down the 6-week abortion ban, because the March for Life demonstrates, while there was this major victory with the Dobbs decision, but it demonstrates that the pro-life movement still has, as I said in the latest issue of Light magazine, a marathon of good works ahead of us, because you've got to go to the 50 states who are all vastly different. You've got to put in the groundwork that it takes, and you've got to take the long view, like you have mentioned, to be able to get this work done and ultimately see abortion illegal in every single state. That's what we would desire. And until that's the case, to eliminate as many abortions as possible. In addition to the work that we have to do to see the abortion pill eradicated and abortion tourism done away with. So there's a lot of work to be done. It's not time to stop marching yet or to stop standing, because we've got to continue to be a voice for these vulnerable children and their vulnerable parents. Now, Brent, as we wrap up, since you're going to be in D.C. next week, and D.C. is a place that you love and have many good memories about, what are some of your must-see places when you are in D.C. and you're going to be there next week?
Well, this will actually be the first time that I've been back to the Capitol when the Capitol is completely open again. So over the last year and a half, well, prior to that, especially with COVID, but continuing even after that, you've had to have a specific meeting, and a representative from an office has to come get you to bring you up to the meeting, and you haven't been able to walk around the Capitol. And now, thankfully, those prohibitions, they have ended. And so I'm just looking forward to what does the Capitol feel like without those sorts of restrictions.
Do you walk around humming patriotic songs to yourself?
I don't quite do that.
But
I may do it. I may do it now, though. Yeah, since you suggested it. So no, I am looking forward to that. We've got a number of meetings that are set up for next week, and I usually try and make a visit to Old Ebbitt Grill, which is just kind of hop, skip, and a jump from the White House. Probably one of my favorite places to eat. Lots of fond memories there.
Yeah. What do you get?
Well, just about everything's good, but I actually always tell people to look on the dessert menu. If they have the full dessert menu back, which they haven't had since COVID, so I'm hoping maybe it's back, but they have a blonde brownie sundae. That is just...
so good.
It's exquisite. It's so good. Actually, when I used to work on the Hill and we would go there, we actually ordered it first before the main course.
Yeah.
Because it's so good.
So good.
Our rationale was, why would you delay getting that with, steak, burger, whatever? Let's just start with what you came there for, which was the dessert. So yeah.
That makes me want to
it's really good.
Go find a good dessert and eat it.
Yeah.
Well, fun. Well, we look forward to hearing about your visit to D.C. and what all you experienced there with Stand for Life, and then as a part of the March for Life. Hopefully you won't freeze, because we know how much you hate the cold. And we'll see you again once you get back from our nation's capital. Just a reminder, you can find links to all the things we talked about today in the show notes. And if you like the podcast, please consider helping us spread the word by sharing the episode on social media or going into your favorite podcast app and leaving us a rating and review. The ERLC podcast is a production of the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission and is hosted by Lindsay and Brent Leatherwood. Technical production provided by Owens Productions. It's edited and mixed by Mark Owens. Thanks again for listening, and we'll be back next week with more content.